Welcome to Chills with Chas. We are going to continue the Haunted Heartland series with A Ghost in Time. So let's get into it. The most famous haunted house in the port once towered over spacious lawns at the center of 1 and 10th Street. Many families lived there during its 100 years of existence. Nearly everyone reported weird manifestations. The hauntings have not stopped. Witnesses say unusual things have been happening at the medical clinic, now occupying the spot where the haunted mansion once stood. They may continue indefinitely because their apparent cause is related to the land itself. Before La Pointe was a settlement. Potawatomi Indians camped on the prairie at 1 and 10th Street. They particularly liked a small pond which they named Came and Went. At times, after a torrential rain, the pond filled to a great depth. On other occasions, it would be nearly dry. The water came and went. In 1848, the pressures of settlement forced the Indians on the part of the frontier to move to land set aside in Kansas. On the long march westward, the Native Americans crossed near Came and Went Pond. Legend says that a young Potawatomi maiden became ill there and died. It is her spirit that may haunt the site of that long ago pond, now the center of 1st and 10th. The modern history of the property began when Dr. George L. Andrew finished his medical studies in Ohio and New York and came to Indiana in 1845. He married Catherine Piatt Andrew, a distant cousin and daughter of James Andrew, one of the founders of La Pointe. Soon after, he started construction of a 3-story colonial mansion. Andrew was a remarkable man, one of the first to use ether in surgery. Later, he served with distinction in the Army of the Potomac and the Army of the West during the Civil War. He retired from practice in 1885 and died in 1911. Catherine Piatt Andrew died at the age of 100 in 1926. George Andrew's La Pointe mansion was one of the most impressive structures anywhere in the Midwest. 4 towering columns rose skyward from an open veranda stretching the width of the house. A second-floor sun porch overlooked the circular driveway. Shutters closed it against the winter winds. An airy sunroom was at the rear. The house had several dozen rooms, 5 set aside above the kitchen for servants' quarters. The Andrews sold the mansion in 1885 to the Dunn family when remodeling the house and raised the servants' quarters. Later, the Gwynn family purchased the house and lived there from 1904 until 1948. They were the first to notice the hauntings. The story of their 44-year life with a living ghost comes mainly from the recollections of Miss Madeline Gwynn Kinney, a daughter and the former curator of the LaPointe County Historical Museum. One oddity was the appearance of several old coins. Mr. Kinney recalled that once, while cleaning an empty downstairs closet, a sound like that of something being dropped to the floor came from behind her. She turned to see the 4 coins, 2 pennies and 2 nickels, dated 1876, 1877, 1867, and 1869. Where they came from was a mystery. There was no holes or cracks in the walls. The ghost first made itself known by tampering with the front doorbell. It was an old-fashioned type that had to be cracked to produce a ring. One winter night, during a particularly fierce blizzard, the bell rang. When Mr. Gwynn opened the door, the porch was empty. The fresh snow lay undisturbed. Miss Kinney lost track of the number of times pounding footsteps rattled up and down the main staircase. Often when they securely bolted the doors and windows before retiring. They awoke in the morning to find each and every portal standing open wide. Crashes, not unlike sonic booms, often shattered the stillness, but nothing was ever found broken. Was she or her family ever afraid of their unseen tenant? No, according to Miss Kinney. I will say we always rather admired the ghost because one never knew what it would do next. The Zimmerman family was the last to occupy the house. They suffered far more than the ghost's antics than any of the other tenants. At one point, the father, Robert Zimmerman, purchased a revolver to protect himself against the ghostly visitations. The Zimmermans always felt some presence in the house. Nothing visible, only an uneasy feeling of prying eyes. The upstairs hallway seemed to be a focal point for mysterious happenings. Doors to various rooms closed quietly as someone walked by, even though the room was empty. A movement of air, the rush of breathing down someone's neck, would cause a family member to turn quickly, but futilely to catch sight of the visitor. Miss Zimmerman, like Miss Kinney, also experienced the fallen coins incident. She had removed all the wallpaper in the same closet, washed the walls, and was picking up her supplies when she heard a faint tinkling noise. She opened the door and found a small collection of old silver coins in the center of the closet floor. She had no idea where they'd come from. Another incident occurred late one evening when Miss Zimmerman was alone in the house. She heard steps ascending the staircase, moving across the landing toward the shuttered door, and then silence, almost as if someone had entered the vanished servants' rooms. The ghost in the Andrew house also continued his particular affections for the front door. One of the Zimmerman girls was alone in the house when the cracked type doorbell rang. She ran downstairs to answer it, but found the porch empty. The girl shut the door. The bell rang again. She stared at the crank, as it continued to turn and ring, ring, ring. Making sure the door was locked, she secured back upstairs. When she ventured down later, the front door stood wide open, snow blowing into the chilled hallway. The only reported appearance of the ghost occurred to another Zimmerman daughter, Gina, as she picked spring flowers in the garden. Gina felt a chill, as if she were being observed. She looked around the yard and glanced toward the house. The figure of a strange woman stood in the attic window, staring down at her. Immediately, the woman moved away. There were no visitors in the house. When Gina checked the garret, it was clear that no living being had been there for a very long time. The Andrew mansion passed through other hands, but no one ever lived in the house after the Zimmermans moved away. Finally, it became the target of vandals and attracted by its ghostly reputation. To call up the demons, they built fires on the beautiful floors, and it's not clear whether or not they raised any spirits. The city of LaPorte condemned the house and eventually tore it down to move way for the medical center in the early 1970s. The Indian Heritage connection with that piece of property apparently continued in the gleaming modern world of medicine. Doctors and nurses say an elevator in the building seemed to move between floors on its own. The doors opened and closed even though no one in the conveyance or pushing call buttons. On several occasions, a nurse worked late in the basement of the clinic near the elevator heard the doors open. When she left her desk to check, the doors closed again as if some invisible passenger had stepped in and alighted. Custodians on their early morning's rounds had found doors and windowless bathrooms locked from the inside. None of the bathrooms had a second exit. The George Andrew house is only a memory. It has vanished along with many other remembrances of LaPorte's early heritage. That corner at 1st and 10th Street is now a busy intersection, just like many others. But something seems to linger, an entity that doesn't want to let go. An Indian maiden trapped between earth and a spirit world? That is what the landmarkers will tell you, as will a few doctors and nurses in the medical center, or those people still alive who confronted the mysteries in the vanished Andrew mansion. Alright, that's it for that one. Thank you for listening, and come back for more.